Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And this is part 7, the final of our M60A3 with the M9 Bulldozer attachment by TACOM in 1/35 scale. And we got a lot of work to do. Well, it's not a lot. It just takes time to do it. We got our pin wash to put on, and we're going to do some acrylic mud and some enamel mud effects, as well as we've got to make an antenna. We've got to have an antenna for the radio. So, and then of course the final reveal. So that's at the end. So let's jump on down to the bench here and finish this one up. Okay, so here's our M60A3 as we left it from the last video. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the commander's cupola off and the turret. That'll make it much easier to do what we have to do next. And that's going to be the panel liner. So what I'm going to be using for the panel liner is going to be the Tamiya black panel liner. Now my bottle is a little bit thick. I've been using this for about 4 years. So what I've done is I've kind of thinned it out, and it's like 50-50 enamel thinner and panel liner here. That'll help it flow much better. And also for applying it, I'm not going to use the brush that comes in the bottle. I'm going to use this number 4 brush here. It's very long and tapered and pointy. Those long bristles will hold a lot of that product, the panel liner, and we can get a lot more done without having to go back to the bottle so often. So we did clear coat this with the Tamiya X22 gloss clear, and that really helps the flow of our panel liner, and it keeps it from wicking out across the surface. If you put panel liner on a flat coat of paint, it tends to spider and travel out from where you want it. So that X22 clear coat or any acrylic clear coat, you want it to be an acrylic because you want that to be different than the enamel-based panel liner. That way when you come and clean it up, you're able to do that without affecting the paint. So we're just going to go around all over the vehicle here with that panel liner, and as you can see, there's quite a bit that needs that panel liner. So we're going to put that in every little groove and every little bolt and everything. Now when it comes to cleanup, since it is an enamel-based product, we just need a little bit of enamel thinner. And here I'm using a brush, mainly because these details are really fine, and if I use a cotton swab on it, I would have to be extremely careful not to over dampen that panel liner, which would draw, the cotton would draw the panel liner out away from the part, and then it would be like we never did it, so we'd have to go back and reapply. So I'm just using a brush to do the cleanup. And you want to make sure that you go around the entire vehicle and you get everything cleaned up that you possibly can, because when we flat clear coat this, that's going to be the end of that. You're not going to be able to go back and get that off. So now's a good time to go ahead and put our fuel cans on and our water cans. And I'm going to use CA glue for that. Just need a couple of little dabs there in the locating holes, and then we will attach our fuel cans to the side of the turret. Just make sure that we hit those holes and that it's fully seated. And here you can see we've got our water cans on the bustle rack and our fuel cans on the rear of the turret there. That looks really good. Now we need to go ahead and put our tow cables into place, but they are a little bit fiddly, and we're going to be using CA glue with that, and my hands will be in the way. So I'll just go ahead and do that, and there we are. Tow cables are installed. Now we're going to do a little bit of graphite weathering on them later, but I think it looks pretty good. We're in good shape there. So next up, everything needs a coat of this. This is the Vallejo matte varnish, which is 100% resin. And we're going to spray all of our parts to include our tracks. Now, the reason why we're going to do the tracks is because we did those highlights there with the metallic silver steel, whatever it was. But since we dry brushed that with an enamel, we're going to need that sealed as well. We don't want it to react with our weathering products later. Next up is some sponge chipping, a little bitty piece of torn sponge there. And my first color I'm going to use is going to be that olive green. Now, if you remember from the painting videos, and just in case you hadn't seen it, we darkened up this olive green with a little bit of black so that it wasn't so bright. So by using that base olive, which should be plenty light enough to do some minor chipping, and this will give a lot more detail and more aesthetically pleasing for a vehicle that's slightly used. And we're just going to go around and catch some corners, and you can also use this in some flat areas to show a little bit more visual interest, like small chips or something there, or abrasions on the paint. Now, the paint on these vehicles was extremely durable, so you're not going to see chips down to the metal and stuff like that. So we're going to be using the green on green. And then for the brown, we're going to have to do something different. So for our brown, now this is the warm brown that we used. And these are water-based craft paints, just in case you're wondering. We're going to have to lighten this up a little bit because we used that warm brown straight out of the bottle, more or less, and just thin for the airbrush. When it comes to chipping, we actually need a lighter color. So I'm going to try to put just one drop, and it's more like a dab here of white into it. We're going to mix that up really good. It's going to give us a really light brown to use for our chipping. And just want to make sure that it's really mixed up well so that we don't end up with some really odd white clumps or something like that might look a little strange. Same process as before with the green. We're just going to load our sponge up. Now, I am using a different sponge from the one that I was using for the green. And then we're going to go back and catch corners and handles and all those little areas there. Anything that was covered, that is an edge of some kind, that was covered with the brown, we'll go back over it with this lighter brown and give those little chip effects there. And as you can see how the green on green and the brown on brown chipping effects are starting to come together here. Now you can also use this for scratches and for putting little chips in flat areas if you decide you want to chip there. And I'll do that here on this hydraulic tank, just a little bit in the middle there, just to show that during maintenance or something, somebody dropped a wrench or something. Now, I'm not saying that, mechanics drop wrenches, but, well, I did. So next up, we've got our X19 here, which is smoke. Now, this is a really transparent type color. The color is not as important as the reason why we're using it, which is to go in over top of these vision blocks, which we had to paint in because TACOM didn't give us any clear parts for these. They were just molded in place, and we painted those black. So we're going to go over it with the X19, kind of give it a little shine there. So when the light catches it in certain angles, it'll give the appearance that there's glass there rather than just a flat black panel. So now we're going to turn our attention to these hydraulic rams here that are on the lower control arms for our bulldozer blade. Now this is isopropyl alcohol that I'm using with a Q-tip or cotton bud, whichever you prefer. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to clean off the overspray that's on these because we're going to be painting those with a chrome colored paint. To get down in real close, I'm just going to scrape that with a blade. You want to make sure that you keep the alcohol away from any painted surface that you don't want cleaned off, because it will take it off in the wink of an eye. So, and the reason why we're doing this, we need a real nice smooth surface for our enamel paint, which is next. Now, this is the Model Masters Chrome Silver. Testers would work just as well, and I'm sure the other Chrome Silver paints would be fine. Now, since it is an enamel, we're going to have to make sure that we give it plenty of time to dry before we start handling it. And so here we're just going to paint these up using that chrome. And like I say, give it plenty of time to dry before you try to handle it. So next up, we need to turn our attention to our headlight lenses. And I am just using one of those silicone brushes to grab onto these really, really small headlight lenses. You're going to need to be very careful with these, because if you lose it, they don't give us any extras. So, it would be nice if they did, but they didn't. So they are pretty much a perfect fit, so it's not a problem putting them in. Now, the one thing that I am going to do is I'm going to use the Tamiya Extra Thin just to touch the edges of the clear lenses and let it just wick around those headlights so that it will secure them in place, so we don't have them popping out and losing them. Now, you'll notice that each one of these headlight assemblies are painted exactly the same, which means the headlight is on the exact same side and the infrared light is on the opposite. And that's because these headlight assemblies were interchangeable from left to right. There's not an outboard or or a left one or a right assembly. It was the same assembly. They're interchangeable from left to right. So you need to paint these up so that they are identical. And I did check to make sure that I got the headlight on the correct side. So just in case you're wondering. So as long as you paint them up this way, it will be authentic. Yeah, for any of our rivet counters out there. I will say that TACOM has done a wonderful job here in their moldings. I mean, the details are just fantastic. It really looks good. So next we can go ahead and pull off all that masking tape. Now we have this masking tape on all of the clear parts that went into the build. So we're going to peel all that off very carefully and do our best to not get into the paint. We don't want to be chipping the paint around these periscopes. Also, we have that the driver's center periscope that he uses for, this is the extended periscope that he needs for the, because he's got the blade on this particular vehicle. And we'll just take those off. And don't forget about taking the ones off of the turret as well. So this is Vallejo Thick Mud, and it is an acrylic, water-based mud compound of a sort. And it's got like sand and little bitty pieces of grass and stuff in it to give it body. And we're going to be using that all over the vehicle in certain areas. But here we're doing the blade first. And oftentimes here, that cutting edge, just above it, it has a lip, and the dirt or mud or whatever is not going to slide off of it right there, and it tends to collect. So we're going to go ahead and build that up with this acrylic mud to give it some body there. That way we've got mud stuck to the front of our blade, which is going to really enhance the look overall. And then we can come back in just with a wet, using water, and I'm kind of streaking it down a little bit here, which is going to thin it out. And that's the good thing about this mud, is that you can use just plain old water with it, and for cleaning up your tools, and or for smoothing it out in certain areas. So you can do all kinds of little play with it there to give it different textures and different thicknesses. Now we don't want to forget the lower gussets and what have you on the back of the blade area because there will be some blade back dragging, of course, and we'll just go ahead and put the mud there. And it tends to build up above your final drives, of course, so we're going to go ahead and put our mud there. Now, one thing to remember, especially on this particular kit, that drive sprocket fits really close there. So if you get this onto that surface or any surface that you don't want it on, since it's a water-based acrylic, it's going to dry really fast. So you need to get it off. If you get it on something you don't want it on, then you need to get it off as soon as you can. And we're going to go on up underneath the fender there with the way this hull is shaped. It kind of flares out underneath the fender, which is a good place for mud to collect. So we're going to use this same acrylic to go around and add a little bit of mud body there along that. And we'll also put it on our the tops of our road wheel arms and our shock brackets and stuff like that. Places where mud is more likely to collect. Now while we're doing this, we don't want to forget our road wheels, and they do have a pronounced lip towards the outside there, which tends to collect quite a bit of material. And just ask any tanker that has had to wash their tank at the wash rack. They'll let you know that that's a good place when you hit it with the fire hose to get covered in mud and water as it comes back out at you when you're trying to wash this mud out. So we're going to pack some mud in around there, and we're going to do this with all of our road wheels. We also have these areas on our drive sprockets. The center disc area, which is where the center guides are going to go, they're going to be it's going to stay cleaned out in the center, of course, from the guides running through. But towards the outside, mud will pack in there. So we're going to use this acrylic mud to kind of build that body up around the outside of the drum area there, just to give it some texture. And we're also going to use it on the inside of the drum area where the mud and stuff kind of squeezes out and comes through those clean-out holes that are nicely molded into these drive sprockets. Really nice detail there. So just a little bit of texture, and then we'll be using the enamel products here to give it some color. So for our mud effects, we'll be using this one right here. This is Earth Effects, which is a medium color, and then our darker color, we'll be using that as well. I'm just going to use my brush, and I'm just going to dip into it. Now this is a wash, but it is concentrated in the bottle. So if you paint it on, it'll be extremely thick, like a really thick enamel paint. And it will take forever to dry, and it will stay shiny for months. So we're going to thin this out probably somewhere around 60-40 or 60-30 or 70-30, if I get my math right here. So we've got more thinner than we do product, and that's going to do a couple of things for us. Number one, it's going to allow it to dry much quicker, and number two, it's going to run and spread out, which is really what we want it to do, because wet mud does that. So we're just going to use the advantage of gravity to let it go where it wants to go. And so we're going to cover the hull, and as you can see there, I didn't give a really good shot on the other view, but you can see we're just going to cover up all the mud and up underneath the fenders and stuff like that. Just let it run down around that rather shapely hull we got going on, and it'll give it a more natural appearance. Of course, we're going to go back in and enhance that a little bit after it dries. Now you may need to put 2 coats on it, which I do on the underside and around the track areas. We'll put 2 coats on it. So next up, we need to think about putting this blade onto our tank. The upper control arms, since it's upside down, they're the ones on the bottom that I just pushed down. I need to push those out of the way. And we're going to have to do the center, or the top control arms first, really. At first I stick the rams in, and then I see where I kind of made a mistake there. So we're going to have to pull that back off. There we go. And we do the upper control arms first and snap those into place. So I did go in and file them a little bit to make them easier to insert. Give it a little wiggle and it'll go right in. Now we can go and put our rams into the cylinders and attach those lower control arms. So getting everything lined up, as you can see, is quite I wish I had a third hand here. Don't we always? But they do go in just fine, and then we can take and press those control arms down into place. As soon as I get those rams down, there we go. And it takes a little bit of pressure, and you think that you're probably going to break it, but they will go on. You just got to be very careful how you hold that hull, because we don't want to break anything off on the top side. There we go, all snapped into place. Now when it comes to those links, which we beveled before, you just use your thumb and you can just snap those right into their brackets. And then it's all assembled, and it actually works, which is, I'm amazed that it still works. Isn't that fantastic? Look at that. Oh, it's exciting. And I didn't break anything. That's even more exciting. I didn't have to fix something. All right, so now we can go on with the rest of our weathering. So we're using that same color that we used before, and it is mixed very thin. And as you can see, it's just going to run all over the place. So we're just taking and just put this product on everything. What we're doing is we're giving it a light dusty coat, which really helps tone down the paint quite a bit, and makes everything more unified. And once we got that on, we'll set that aside and let it dry. And we're going to move on to the turret. And we'll do the same thing with the upper part of the hull as well. Just kind of cover everything with it. You don't want it to dry, because if it does and you go back at it, you may have some tide marks. And that's where the enamel thinner will run over into certain areas and cause some spotting, and you really don't want that. And as you can see here, we're just covering everything. I know it looks kind of thick, but that's okay. The thinness of the mixture is going to allow it to collect in all those little crevices and nicks and grooves and stuff. Now once we're done with that, we will go back, and here I'm working on the lower hull, and with a clean brush and some enamel thinner, and I'm kind of pulling it up. And this is going to add some streaking marks for us. And the reason why I'm pulling it up is because I don't want to push the product down underneath the vehicle where we're not going to see it. And this will give us some extra definition there on on either side of where we're brushing it by having that product a little bit thicker there because of the way we're brushing it on. Now when it comes to the turret, on the sides of the turret here, we're kind of pulling it down and just making some light streaks on it. I'm not going to go real crazy with it, just a few streaks here and there, just to make it look as if, you know, some moisture has run off. And we do want to be careful. I did find out that Vallejo matte finish that we put on it is a little bit delicate. So, but here you can see I'm going over the decals as well. A little bit of streaking there. Help bring that color out in certain spots. and randomly. So next up, we're going to use some dark mud. And I mix this the exact same way as we did before, but I am just going to target certain areas. And these will be the thick areas of the mud that's on our blade, right down next to that the top edge of the cutting edge there on the blade itself. That's where the mud's going to be the thickest. And we're just going to give it a little bit of dark color there, where the mud is not completely dry. And yeah, I think it's going to look really good. Now, you never know what you get until it is completely dry, and then you may want to add more. So here we're getting ready to attach our running gear. So that's for the drive sprockets and also for our road wheels and all that. And what I really want is these axle shafts and these contact areas where we've got to glue or cement our components on. I want a nice clean plastic area there for them. So again, the isopropyl alcohol and a cotton bud works wonders. Just don't get it up against anything that you don't want to remove any paint off of. And because of that, I will go in and clean it up close, those closer edges with a knife and just scrape it off. So here our track has a pin in it, and there's a lot of tension on these tracks. So I'm going to put that pin right at our drive sprocket, kind of towards the back there, so that all that tension doesn't cause our tracks to bow in to the center of our drive sprocket there. And then all we got to do is just cement them into place. And here we're just laying the track out. Now, I'm using the thick Tamiya cement here because it grabs really good and it holds super strong. Next up, we're going to do our front idler, and we're going to use the same adhesive, the Tamiya thick. And we're just going to slide our idler wheel into the track there. Get those center guides between our road wheels. And then we just need to get it up onto the axle shaft itself. And once we get it on there, we just need to make sure that we've got it pressed all the way in. And we just need to hold it just a little bit. And as you can see, those tracks are still pretty tight. So we'll do the opposite side as well. Now, once our idler and our sprocket has had plenty of time to firm up for us, all we got to do is stretch our track down and we can start attaching our road wheels. I start off with the first and last road wheel, which is going to pull our track down right where it needs to be. And then all we got to do is cement in all of our others. Unfortunately, TACOM does not use those polycaps, so we're just going to glue these into place. And of course, once we get all of our road wheels into place, we can start doing our support rollers. And we have 3 per side. And a little bit of the Tamiya thick cement in the hole for those. And we can just pop those in. And that track fits really close to the fender, so you're going to have to make sure that it's in the slot there for our support rollers. So again, with our tracks attached, and I give everything time to dry, I go back in, and we're going to muddy up our tracks a little bit here. And we're just going to kind of brush this on. It's not complicated, not hard. And since it's a thin mixture, it's going to cause those pigments to really collect in all the little nooks and crannies and crevices and around the bolt details and all that stuff. So we'll go ahead and put this on, and we'll do both sides, of course. Now, while all of that is drying, it's time to look for a piece of sprue that we can make make an antenna out of. But as you can see, the TACOM sprues, they've got flat sides to them. So I go to my little bag of goodies here of pieces of sprue that I've cut off that are round sections. And because you really need a round section of sprue to make a round antenna. So we're going to stretch some sprue here to make that antenna. And I'm just using a little T-light here. It's always good to keep one of those around. Now, you can't really tell in this portion of the video, but I'm not down on top of the flame. I'm well above the flame, at least an inch or so. And we just need the heat. If you get your sprue too close to the flame, it'll blacken. Not that it's going to hurt anything, but you don't want the plastic to bubble up or to be extremely soft in any one spot, because if you do, it will affect how that sprue stretches out. And here I started stretching, and yeah, I broke it. So we'll grab another piece of sprue. That's why you keep plenty around. And we're going to start the process all over again. Once it gets very, very pliable, as you can see here, we can start our stretching. So if you start your stretch, kind of stop a little bit and then go on, then you get a more consistent stretch of sprue. And then you're going to want to hold it, okay? And this is for the benefit of you guys that's never played with this sprue and stretched any before. So we want to hold it that way, let it cool a little bit, and it'll give us some sections that we can use there. There we go. It didn't curl up or break. We're in good shape. So with my section of sprue trimmed to the length that I want it, there is a little ball, well, it's actually more like a teardrop shape, that goes onto the end of these antennas. And for you guys who've been in the military, you know what that looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this enamel paint here to put just a drop onto the end of it. Now, you may have to go back and dip it 3 or 4 times. Let it dry completely. Go back and check it. And if it doesn't have enough body, then go back and do it again. And that's kind of what you end up with there. So you got a little ball there on the end of our antenna, which is exactly what we need. So with that done, we'll go back to our green color, which is our darkened olive, more like an olive drab, but it's really I think it's a NATO green that we used in the 60s and 70s and 80s. We'll just paint that antenna up. So now we've got our dry pigments. Now this is the black or the iron oxide that I'm going to be using here. And we need to simulate. We're going to simulate the soot that is on our grill doors here. This is where the exhaust tips are actually located, behind the grill doors. And there is up towards the left corner and the right corner of these grill doors is where that exhaust is going to be. So we need to go ahead and add that soot in. And I use water as a carrier for that, and it helps it stick. And then once it dries completely, we come in with a little bit of enamel thinner, and just make sure that the brush is extremely wet, and you just dab it on there, and it'll wick right through that dry pigment. So you have to make sure that all the water's out. This will fix it and keep it from rubbing off of the vehicle. Next up, we need some graphite. So this is just regular old pencil lead, and I'm just using a dull used craft knife here, craft knife blade, and we're just going to scrape us off some graphite. And I'm going to use the silicone brush here to pick that graphite up and do the rubbing in onto that black paint that we have for our 50 caliber barrel. This will give it some shine and more of a metallic look, trying to get it to look more realistic. And this is good also on vehicles where you have certain shiny parts on grab handles and stuff that may be well used. A lot of World War II vehicles, it looks good in those areas. But as you can see here, you can see how it gives it just a little bit of shine there in those areas, and it doesn't look like it's just black paint, so it looks pretty good. Now we're going to use the same process for the cable, for the tow cables here. So that copper wire, which we've painted, we're just going to go in and rub it with the silicone brush and get that graphite on. So next up, it's time for our antenna. So that's a little bit of CA glue there, and hopefully I get it center. I might be just a little bit off, but it'll be fine in the end, don't worry. Just need to hold it long enough for it to stick into place. Now you're going to want to check and make sure that you've got it at the correct angle, and it's vertical. And here we are, all finished. And I think it came out pretty good. Of course, you know, it's up to you guys. You guys are always the judge of what little bit of work I put in on them. But I will say that TACOM has made a very, very nice model here. The detail is fantastic. The only thing about the kit itself that I mean, it's okay. It worked out in the end, but the photo etch for the bustle rack doesn't quite meet those railings there on the bustle rack at the top, but that's okay. There's a little gap there. And I understand, you know, from the manufacturing process and how we had to assemble it, that maybe it wouldn't. And then we had a little bit of warpage, but I don't think that's TACOM's fault. It may have been, you know, storage issues or something like that, because polystyrene will bend and warp if it is stored in really hot places. So, yeah, this is a great kit. Really great kit. And if you're looking to do an M60A3 or like this one, the M60A3 with the dozer blade, because TACOM offers both. They also offer the M60A1 if you'd prefer to do that. So I'm sure those models have the same exquisite detail that this one does, and it looks fantastic. It really does. And it builds up with very minimal issues, really. So, yeah, it's a great kit. Now, I don't really recommend this kit for a beginner. So you're going to want to get, you know, 4 or 5 builds under your belt before you tackle something that has this many parts. And some of the parts are rather small and a little bit fragile, so you're going to have to be careful and be used to working with small parts. So, yeah, if you've built a few models and you'd like to have an M60A3, especially one with a dozer blade like this one, I highly recommend this kit. TACOM always does a wonderful job with their detailing and their texturing, and very minimal, if any, flash is something that you're going to have to deal with. So, yeah, it's a great kit. So, special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this build. And if you did, please leave me a comment. I read everyone and answer everyone. And if you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope today I earned your subscription, and I hope that you enjoyed this build. And it is, this, like I say, this TACOM, all of their products that I've built so far are really, really good. So I don't think you can go wrong by buying a TACOM kit. Not that I'm a TACOM guy, but I mean, you know, because you do have those types of people, those TACOM guys and those Tamiya guys, and I build everything, so that's fun. So I guess that's the end of this one. On to the next one. So until I see you next week, you guys stay safe.